so I'll know when we're up. All good?
Yep.
Let's see. I think it'll probably prompt me or something. Hopefully. Says live on your end. There we go. Just popped up for me. All right, everybody. What is going on? It is the first ever Shea Station pregame show, and it is a momentous occasion because we are in our first playoff game in 6 long years. I'm very excited to do this. I'm very excited to see the chat and have you guys ask some questions and talk with you guys. It's a very rare experience for me because usually we're pre-recorded and then Shea Station gets uploaded and I get all the feedback after. Now I'm going to get it live, which is very cool. Glad to see we already have like 20 people in chat. Very, very cool. Jerry is not joining me because Jerry is in New Jersey getting ready for the SNY pregame show. So once you're done here, go turn on your TV, turn it to SNY so you can go watch Jerry as well. You can get both of our takes. A lot of playoff baseball today, but the marquee matchup is tonight for our Mets versus Padres. We just got the lineups, so we're going to go through them. We're going to go through the stats. I don't have Audio Jack here either today because he's at Comic-Con because he's a dweeb, but I do have the guy who's famously known for crafting Shea Station's killer music, Mikey. He's on the mic at the producer box. Mikey, say what's up.
What's going on? I'm so excited to be here. It's a very nerve-wracking but exciting day.
Yeah, man. We had a decent showing of Mets fans in the office today. A lot of people in Mets jerseys. I'd say about 8 to 10 of us, so there's a decent showing here. I will be on the JM Baseball stream tonight with Jake and Joe's. Hopefully they are nice to me and not too mean. Wow, chat's popping off. Love this. Love to see all the Mets fans here. So happy you guys are just as excited and antsy as I am. We're going to kind of model this off the Talking Ace pregame show, but this is also our own thing. So let's make it our own thing. Let's make it as Mets as possible. Gotta love that. Gotta tell you about today's sponsor for the pregame show first, and that is Ridge Wallet. And I got one in my hand right here. They are super, super cool, really easy to use, and really tiny. You can like clip it on your belt. It's awesome. We loaded it up with cards from people around the office. I'm not going to show you that because that would probably get me in a little bit of trouble. But these things hold up to 12 cards at a time plus room for cash, which is very, very cool. There's over 30 colors and styles, including carbon fiber and burnt titanium, which is burnt titanium. What color is that? That's kind of crazy. The wallets have over 50,000 5-star reviews, somehow more than Shea Station, if you can believe that. I couldn't believe that when I first read it. The durable material from each wallet comes with a lifetime warranty. So if yours somehow breaks, you can go get a new one. And the link is in our description if you want to go buy one now. You can use code Jomboy for 10% off and get your own Ridge wallet today. I highly recommend it, especially if you're not a traditional wallet kind of guy or girl. This just clips on very easy. It holds all your stuff just like a normal wallet would, and it's very, very easy to use. And, bring some confidence, bring some swagger. I like it a lot. So thank you to Ridge Wallet for sponsoring today's first ever Shea Station pregame show. And without further ado, let's talk lineups. Let's talk probables. Let's get into everything. I also want to get some questions from you guys as we go on. So if you have some, save them up. Also, if you're watching the Phillies game, they have bases loaded in the top of the 9th with 1 out against Ryan Helsley. So definitely do some dual streaming to make sure, if you're rooting against the Phillies, which, I am a little bit, you can tap into that. All right, so the Mets announced their lineup a little while ago. I'm sure most of you have seen it by now. Specifically, there's one thing we definitely got to talk about, but we'll go through the ins and outs of it. It's to my left. I motioned the wrong way there. But Brandon Nimmo is leading off in center field. Love that. Francisco Lindor is batting second at shortstop. Some crazy stuff just happened because people are wooing in the DraftKings lounge, which I love. Jeff McNeil batting third, the batting champion, the first ever MLB batting champion in Mets history, second ever National League batting champion. He is third, playing second base, so no Luis Guillorme tonight. A little bit of a shocker there. Batting fourth, Pete Alonso in his first ever MLB postseason game. He's playing first base. Batting fifth, Vogie. He's riding a hot September. We'll talk about that in a little bit. He is DHing. Batting sixth, first time we've seen him in what seems like a month, even though it's been a little bit shorter. Starling Marte, batting sixth in right field. We're going to talk about the quotes that came from Buck Showalter and the Mets brass. He's batting sixth, playing right field. Mark Canha, batting seventh, playing left field. Eduardo Escobar, player of the month in September, all the way down to the 8th spot. So that really lengthens your whole lineup there. He's playing third base. And batting ninth, not James McCann, the starting catcher for the Mets in the postseason, is Tomas Nido. Very, very exciting stuff across the board. Obviously, the biggest one here is Starling Marte. Buck Showalter earlier today in the press conference said there is some unknown there, evidenced by where he's hitting in the order, but they're going to roll with it and see what they got with Starling Marte today. They talked a little bit about DeGrom's blister. He's not pitching today either, but they said it's not an issue. We don't foresee it to become an issue. And they are very candid about the way they are using DeGrom going forward. He will pitch game 2 if we lose tonight. He's going to pitch game 3 or NLDS game 1 if things go our way in tonight's game. So Starling Marte in the lineup, although we don't know how long he might be in there. He might be in there for a sub, or if he can play the field, they might just leave him. But I think not batting him second was probably a good idea, even though it's not really the way we're used to seeing him in that capacity. But it's very, very exciting that there was just enough time for him to get back. You would have loved to have this weekend to give him a little bit more time to heal up. But there was no way that Starling Marte was not going to find his way into this lineup. I'm loving reading the chat. Everyone's got the Starlings going off, which I absolutely love. Everyone's getting hype. Let's check in on the Phillies really quick. I got to keep up with that. The Phillies did get a run. Oh, boy. How'd that happen? I got to see. Bases loaded, 1 out. Very exciting. Okay, so maybe the Phillies will sneak this one out. Who knows? But we're not here to talk about the Phillies. We're here to talk about the Mets, guys. Let's focus up. On the Padres side of thing, they kind of waited a while to announce their lineup, but we finally have it. It's definitely interesting, especially at the top of it. Leading off is Jurickson Profar in left field. Juan Soto in right field is batting second. Manny Machado batting third, playing third base. Josh Bell DHing in the 4-hole. Jake Cronenworth, which was shocking to me, he's batting in the 5-hole, playing second. Will Myers is batting sixth at first base, Hassan Kim, 7th at shortstop. Trent Grisham, center field, batting 8th, and Austin Nola batting 9th at catcher. I'm a little shocked by the architecture of this lineup, specifically Cronenworth in the 5-hole, because we mentioned this on the last Shea Station episode. I'm going to go through some of these matchup numbers again. Cronenworth is 0 for 13 with 4 strikeouts against Max Scherzer in his career. So if he comes up in a big spot in the first inning with 2 runners on or something like that, I think you can really bet on those odds. And a lot of these guys across the board don't have great numbers against Max Scherzer. We mentioned the big one on the pod, Manny Machado, 8 for 50, 2 doubles, 2 home runs, 20 strikeouts and 50 at-bats, and 0 walks. And that incredibly large sample size, Manny Machado has not worked a walk against Max Scherzer. Very, very alarming stuff. The big one that we mentioned was Josh Bell, 5 for 12, 3 doubles, a homer, and 4 RBI, plus 3 walks. Bell did not have the second half that many Padres fans probably thought he would. But that being said, he's still very much a threat in this lineup, and he did kill the Mets when he was on the Nationals. So that's something you definitely got to look out for. But Profar at the top, 2 for 11. Brennan Drury not in the lineup, a little bit shocking to me. He's 1 for 11 with 3 strikeouts against Scherzer. And Trent Grisham, 2 for 15 with 3 punch-outs. I like this lineup a lot. I really like that Marte kind of fought his way in, and I do love that Eduardo Escobar, who kind of bounced up to 5th and then bounced up to 6th and was, hitting a really hot bat. We have him at the bottom of the lineup now, which is very, very exciting because I feel like it extends the entire thing. Obviously, the one gripe I have is that you don't have that solution for the 2-hole, which has kind of made some problems for the Mets, but Lindor has been fine there. I would like to see Jeff McNeil somewhere in the middle of the lineup, but him in the 3-hole is totally cool with me as well. If you guys have any questions or any talking points you want to talk about, make sure you leave them in the chat. We got 50 people in chat, which is very, very cool. I'm very pleasantly surprised by the first Shea Station pregame show ever. I'm very happy you guys decided to join me. How's the vibe? Are you guys nervous? I'm incredibly nervous. I'm still confident, but it's the first playoff game in 6 years. I'm sure a lot of us forget what this feeling is like, watching other teams play playoff games for years on end and forgetting what it's like to actually have some stake in October. But we're not talking about free agents. We're not talking about the Braves on their run in the playoffs. We're not talking about anything like that. We're talking about the Mets in their wild card set. I don't know about you guys. It obviously sucks that the Braves swept us and we did lose the division, but I'm over it, man. It's in the rearview mirror. I think we got to kind of focus on tonight, focus on the task at hand, and make sure we get to the NLDS, because I fully believe that we are perfectly capable of beating this team. But, you got to go out there and prove it. The Padres did go out there and play 162, just like we did. I'm reading some of the messages. Nick Kowal, who won our Shea Station giveaway and won himself a Vogel Snack shirt. Marte in the lineup calmed me down a lot. I think so, too. I don't even know if he's going to play the full 9. Just seeing his name there was like, Starling Marte is back. It's giving me some semblance of normal. Definitely so. Track Suit says cautiously optimistic, especially with Starling in. So I think that's the big kind of signifier. I don't know if he's going to play all 9, but Starling Marte in is kind of a sign that the Mets are very, very serious about this wildcard round. And I know a lot of people are like maybe thinking they're not taking it as seriously because of the game 2 plans, but I'm sure these guys know that these are must-win ball games at the very least. Wow, up to 60 people now. Very, very cool. Aiden Mushler says 2015 hurt so bad, and I'm definitely ready to be hurt again. I think that's that's a good sentiment. I'm ready to be hurt, honestly. I'm bulletproof in this case because I've gone through it for so many years. I'm ready to be hurt again. I do want to talk about the Mets roster in general because I'm sure all of you guys were on Twitter and following along with that, and we were basically the only team that had our roster announced in spurts rather than just coming out like every other team did. We had Joel Sherman and John Heyman all tweeting out little remnants of the roster, not really telling us the full story. The big one, or I guess the two big ones, we'll talk about them both. Francisco Alvarez makes the cut for the Mets playoff roster, and you got to believe that maybe he'll be starting tomorrow night because tomorrow night will be Blake Snell night against the Mets. Blake Snell has had our number, but he's never had to face the Troll, the 20-year-old catcher, the top prospect in baseball formerly. It is a pretty crazy roster, like my guy Awesome Nader has said in the chat. John Capone says, were you surprised to see McGill on the roster? I definitely was. McGill got COVID IL'd, it seemed like, on the final game of the season to make room for Michael Givens, and then McGill gets removed from that IL almost immediately, and he is on the roster. I had talked on yesterday's episode about possibly having some crazy stuff just happen. Did you see all the O's? Is anyone keeping up with the Phillies game? Oh my God, I want to know what happened really bad. I'm not going to lie. Okay, anyway, what was I talking about? Tyler McGill, my guy. I was shocked because I do think that the role he fills now is kind of the long man, I guess, because Taijuan Walker's not here, and I thought that might have been his role, especially if, there's only 3 games max in this wild card round. So Tyler McGill is probably going to be that because I don't think they want to move David Peterson. I think he's settled in really nicely into his relief role. A shock to me. I was wrong about that. I definitely thought with kind of the higher walk rate and the stamina that Peterson has that he would have been making much more sense as a starter long term, but he's been a great reliever for them as sort of like a 2-inning guy. Rough over Naquin is something that people are talking about a lot in chat. I see Joe and Bella saying that. No Tyler Naquin is a little bit shocking. I don't think he would have moved the needle that much for me, but it is a speed and glove option in the outfield that you're kind of taking out. And instead, you're putting in Darren Ruff. Darren Ruff, we all know, has been a very, very rough Met. But he does have some big postseason moments. He does have great numbers against each of the Padres pitchers, including Josh Hader, who has had a much better September than he did when he first got traded to the Padres, which is probably what most people are remembering at this point. The Phillies have taken the lead over the Cardinals in the 9th inning off Ryan Helsley. That is bad for the Cardinals because they just burned their closer for 5 outs and did not win the game. That is really bad. That's tough. All right, well, good for the Phillies. You guys are catching up now as well. Yeah, I was definitely shocked to not see Naquin, but you weren't going to use him in game 1. You definitely weren't going to use him against Snell, so you would have used him for maybe a pinch hit or a pinch run scenario. And that's why you have Terrence Gore. Terrence Gore is on the roster, and that shouldn't be a shock to anybody. He was picked up, I believe, in March. And I think we all knew that if we made the playoffs, that guy was going to be there. It was Gene Segura who just snuck a ground ball single through the right side to get the Phillies 2 runs. That's quite the comeback for the Phillies against Ryan Helsley. Jomboy just tweeted, holy shit. I can't blame him, honestly. Holy shit is indeed correct. Wow, as soon as we went live, shit just hit the fan. All day, it's just been like 1-0 games.
Been quiet in there all day, and then we get into here, and it's
immediately
crazy over there.
Within 10 minutes. So Darren Ruff is on this roster, and Jerry said on yesterday's pod for everybody that listened that he envisions Ruff starting in right field or starting at DH tomorrow night. If I'm the Mets, that's something I'm definitely considering. I would love to get Troll in there as well. But I think it's probably too soon for Troll to catch a playoff game. He caught 1 game at the very end. Did a good job, but I think it's very, very soon for a 20-year-old to be thrust into that spotlight. I was a little shocked that James McCann was not in tonight's starting lineup because of his numbers against Blake. Who's starting tonight? Yu Darvish, 4 for 10, 2 home runs. I am a little happy that he's not there. But, the numbers are there. They exist, and James McCann has those against Darvish. But yeah, the big ones were Troll making the roster, Ruff making the roster. I want to be able to pull up the full graphic here because I do love what the Mets did with the bullpen. I do believe our bullpen is one of the deepest of any playoff roster. Let's see if I can find it here. Yeah, so the only starters that made it were Bassett, DeGrom, and Max Scherzer. More woos from the DraftKings Lounge. But we have Drew Smith on the roster. We have Joe Ellie, who had a great August and September on the roster. David Peterson, turned a corner since he's moved to the bullpen. He's on the roster. Ottavino, Diaz, Michael Givens, who's been really good his past 15 appearances, is good for him. Yeah, the big question mark here for me was Tyler McGill. I don't really know what role he'll fill. I think it's going to be the mop-up guy to try and keep us in a blowout game if it comes to that, but that's what they're looking at right now. And the Mets roll into the postseason with 6 infielders, one of them being Dan Vogelbach, so I don't even really count that because I don't think we've even seen him play first base if I'm not mistaken. So the big utility guy is going to be Luis Guillorme, and I really thought he would have got a start tonight, but I think if you have Starling Marte available and he says he can play, you got to play him. So that's the route that the Mets win in. Up to 80 people in chat. Very, very cool. Let's see what the people are saying in here. Yeah, a lot of talk.
Stott reached on a fielder's choice. One more run. 4-2 Phils.
Phillies, yeah. All right, don't worry about them. It's fine. Don't worry about them. We don't got to worry about them. You know what? Hey, if we face them in the NLCS, that'll be good for us, I guess. It's not necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, if you guys have talking points or questions you want to bring up, definitely let me know. But I think we should talk a little bit about tonight's Game 1 starter, and that is Max Scherzer. The guy with the most postseason experience on this roster. He is getting the Game 1 ball. A lot of discussion was aimed at why isn't it DeGrom? Should it be DeGrom? I personally like the move a lot, especially because of the versatility that it brings the Mets in terms of options for Game 2 and Game 3. And I definitely want to know what you guys think. I wish I knew how to make I do know how to make a poll. Okay, here we go. If the Mets win Game 1, who should start Game 2 of the National League Wildcard Series? I love that I can make a poll. And it's going to be Chris Bassett or Jacob deGrom. I'm going to let you guys answer first because I know my answer. I just put the poll in there. There it is. Beautiful. That's awesome. Look at that. Live stream innovation.
That looks great. Can I vote on that?
I think you can, unless you are Shea Station, in which case I don't think you're allowed to.
I am Shea Station.
I am literally Shea Station. Wow, look at this. Coming into today, the St. Louis Cardinals were 93-0 when leading by 2 or more runs in their entire postseason history. And they were up 2-0 going against Philadelphia tonight, and now they're trailing 4-2. That's crazy. Let's check in on the poll here. So far, the overwhelming answer for if the Mets win Game 1, the fans would rather see Chris Bassett, 75 to 25%, now 80 to 20%, and pocket DeGrom for either a Game 3 tiebreaker or Game 1 of the NLDS. And I think I'm going to go with the fans, and I'm going to explain why, because a lot of people are like, you guys should wrap up the series. If you have the Game 1 victory, you should just kick the Padres down while you have them. And I just think that you're not playing a full 162 to win the wildcard series. You're trying to do this to win the World Series. And arguably, even if you get to the World Series, the toughest opponent you might face along the way is in the NLDS against the Dodgers. They just had their best season in franchise history. The roster on paper doesn't look all that scary. It's guys like Tyler Anderson and Andrew Heaney that are going to be getting big starts for the Dodgers. But the last thing you want to do is underestimate the Dodgers because they're the Los Angeles Dodgers and they've been there before. And I just think that getting 2 DeGrom starts would absolutely solve the problem of you falling into the wild card spot in the first place. The whole big part, 5-2 Phillies now, crazy. The whole big part of winning the division was obviously the bragging rights, but also being able to set up your rotation the way you want to for a 5-game set in the NLDS. Now you're not afforded that luxury because you have to get at least 1 start from each of your 3-headed monster of aces. So with that being said, if you have an opportunity to get 2 DeGrom starts in a 5-game set, because listen, I don't think either team, regardless of if it's Mets, I guess, the Dodgers kind of wallop the Padres, so I won't say that. But if it's Mets-Dodgers, I fully envision the series going 5 games. I think it's going to be very, very competitive, probably maybe the series of the entire postseason. And if it is that case, you want DeGrom out there for at least 2 games, because Scherzer gets Game 1 tonight. Tonight's Friday. Game 1 of the NLDS, if you make it there, is Tuesday. So Scherzer can't go until at least Game 2. And if you give yourself DeGrom and Scherzer in Game 1 and Game 2 in LA, you're bound to come away with one of those games. That's the thought process I think the Mets are having right now, because the problem with not using DeGrom is that if you use DeGrom in Game 2, you're rolling in there with probably Bassett and maybe Walker, or Bassett and Scherzer, and I feel like your chances are significantly lessened in that case. It is very hinging on if Max is ready to go on 4 days rest or 5 days rest or whatever it may be. But what we do know is that DeGrom needs his full rest. DeGrom is not a short rest guy. I think that's why he's not out here tonight, and they're instead going with the versatile option. So let's check on some more questions. Bassett was the overwhelming winner there. About 50 votes. It goes 80-20 Bassett.
Schwarber hit a sacrifice fly. 6-2.
Wow.
Yeah. They're
Honestly, good for the Phillies. Larissa H says, who would you rather see take on the Braves, the Phillies or the Cards? Right now, I'd say the Phillies. I mean, I don't know what the Braves record is against the Phillies. I'd imagine it's probably really good. Not 14-5 like we were, but probably still sizable in that case. And the Cardinals, I mean, Jose Quintana did look good, but their rotation does not blow me away by any means. They went 11-8 against the Phillies. So the Phillies won some games there. They definitely blew a couple too. So that could be a very interesting series, especially if the Phillies go in with a little bit of momentum and those hot bats are hot. Let's see what else we got. Do you think the larger amount of days off is more positive or negative for the Braves? I heard Dusty Baker was worried about his Astros having too much time off. That was from Tracksuit. Good question. I think a lot of Mets fans remember 2015 NLCS where we swept the Cubs 4-0 and had about a week before we went to Kansas City to play in the World Series. And there's no quantifiable thing that says that's the reason the Mets came out kind of sluggish, because they were still in contention to win most of those games. But at the same time, I definitely think it's a psyche thing. If you have the momentum going and you have big postseason moments that you can kind of build yourself off of, I definitely think that's an advantage. And I think that can be something that works in the Mets' favor with this Padres series, especially if there is some home field heroics that come from this weekend. So I'm not saying I prefer to be a lower seed. I would much rather have that bye and go into the NLDS right away, especially on that side of the bracket. But at the same time, if you're the Mets and you take down the Padres and you take down the Dodgers and then you probably get the Braves in the NLCS, you really are beating the cream of the crop in the National League. And I definitely think that gives you a certain level of bravado and confidence that you might have not had if you had won the division. Who's to say? It's impossible to know, but we'll find out. Nick Kowal says, Jolly, do you think ESPN will do the trumpets justice? I think they will. They better not cut to commercial during Edwin's intro in the playoffs. I will be mad if we do not see the crowd roar during Edwin's intro. Apparently they're prepping some cool blue and orange lights or something. That's what DeComo spoiled yesterday during his round of the park. But I think some special things are definitely in store for this Mets-Padres Game 1. And I have to imagine, with the little amount that we used Diaz in the past month, that he might get used in all three of these games. Even if it's like a 5-0 game, I think those are the kind of moments where you put your foot on the neck of the Padres and you say, no, there's going to be no comebacks today. And we're seeing it firsthand right now with the Phillies and Cardinals. I mean, they tried to do that. They used Helsley in the 8th inning with 1 out to try and get 5 outs from him, and obviously it didn't work. He gave up 6 runs. But I think the Mets are using the cream of the crop tonight. I think Scherzer, even if he's on one, I wouldn't imagine him going more than 6 or 7 innings. And then you use Lugo probably against Juan Soto. That's another question we should probably talk about. Juan Soto. We have not seen him in a while. And it's a little bit of a weird feeling because I'm very used to seeing Juan Soto probably every 2 weeks. But you have to figure out a way to pitch him tonight because he is the biggest threat in this lineup, aside from Manny Machado, who I think will probably be neutralized. Juan Soto, you have 3 options. You have David Peterson, who is not a traditional lefty reliever by any means, but has looked good. Joely Rodriguez, who I'd say is a traditional lefty reliever and has looked good the past 2 months. Or Seth Lugo, who is a righty, but is kind of a reverse splits reliever and has been very good against lefties, but not great of late. And the big thing with Lugo that worries me is he's been giving up a lot of home runs. And I don't know if you guys saw Talking Baseball stat today that they posted. If you hit more home runs in the postseason, you're probably going to win the game. I think the record was something like 25-2 in 2021 were teams that hit more home runs than their opponent. Lugo, in his last 4 games, 5 1/3 innings, 5 earned runs, 2 home runs. Not great. Before that, his track record was as clean as it could get, but he kind of stumbled into the finish line here. Let's talk a little David Peterson as well, because I do think he's kind of a valid option, although we did see him in a big spot in that Subway Series. Did not look great. But since moving to the bullpen, he's had 5 bullpen appearances, 6 2/3 innings, 2 earned runs, 8 strikeouts, only 2 walks, and 1 home run allowed. I like that a lot. He's been facing both righties and lefties. And the big one for me is Joely Rodriguez, because how are you going to deploy this guy? This was a guy that if you had asked me before August, I would have thought maybe not have even been on my postseason roster. And now is he not only on it, he's likely a big piece, especially if you want to give Lugo some sort of relief. In his last 8 appearances to close the season, 9 2/3 innings pitched, 1 earned run, 11 strikeouts, no walks, no home runs. If you're going on recency bias, it's strange to say, but Joely Rodriguez may be the answer for a guy like Juan Soto. And who knows, maybe you'll use more than one of these guys because you're going to have to face Soto probably once every 2 innings, considering how that Padres lineup will probably move. The top of the 9th finally ended in the Phillies game. It's 6-2 going into the bottom of the 9th. Wow, that's incredible. I feel kind of bad for Yachty, Waino, and Pujols. That's tough. It's definitely tough. But yeah, we've hit on a lot of things so far. Definitely want to hear from you guys if you have anything else you definitely want to bring up. We talked roster stuff. Notable omissions were guys like Mark Vientos, who kind of didn't really have it going at the end of the season enough to make this postseason roster. Brett Beatty is not healthy enough to get back in the mix yet, which is definitely unfortunate. Would have loved to see him there. And Taijuan and Cookie both don't make the cut. Taijuan was the one that shocked me the most. Taijuan was the guy I think I would have loved to have maybe come in to mop up if one of our guys, probably Bassett, had a bad start. But now you don't have that option, and you're going to go with a deep bullpen. I like both options. It was definitely a little alarming to not see Taijuan there. Larissa H. says, do you have a team on the American League side of the bracket that you're rooting for to do well? And is your answer different if you go with your head versus your heart? Interesting question. My heart is fully with the Cleveland Guardians because they're so similar to the Mets. I loved Andres Gimenez. 2020 was a dark time for all of us, and a beacon of sunshine was Andres Gimenez. He was absolutely spectacular in that 2020 season. I love those guys. I hope they succeed. And they're the youngest team in baseball, and I think that's a lot of fun for that team to go deep because that veteran presence is definitely all Tito at the manager helm. So I'm rooting for the Guardians. Glad they won today. Hope they keep it up. My head said the Guardians. My heart, it may be weird to hear, but I do want that Subway Series World Series as well. And if the Guardians beat the Rays, it's going to be decided what route I go to because the Guardians will play the Yankees at the Bronx. I would love to be alive for a Subway Series World Series in New York, working for a New York baseball company. It definitely scares me because it's going to be a lot of shit talk in this office. It's going to be a lot of shit talk.
That might be like either the best day of my life or the worst day
of my life. And
having to go home to my friends who are Yankee fans and see them if they beat us, that's a living nightmare.
Yeah, I made all my friends Mets fans, thankfully, from what I did. So they'll all be supportive, which is good. Hey, Jolly, do you think the Mets concealed Hid Marte's status and underplayed it for the advantage of San Diego, thinking he's not a factor? I think his progress was better than we were told. I don't not believe that, but I also think that they were fully prepared to not have Starling on this roster, and I think he willed his way into it. And Buck is the kind of guy that loves his vets and is a player's manager first. So if Starling said he was good, and apparently he hit a moonshot in batting practice per Anthony DiComo, then he might be good. And I think it is advantageous for us because San Diego probably didn't have a game plan ready for Starling Marte, and now he's in the middle of your lineup, and you have no idea what he's going to be capable of. So it is an oddity for both sides. It's a bit of a surprise factor for both sides. Jolly, let's talk numbers on the pen. Padres pen versus our guys and vice versa. Help me get through this gym sesh. Love that you're repping me at the gym right now. All right, so we talked a little bit about Mets bullpen, so I'll focus on the Padres for a little bit because their bullpen's definitely interesting. It's similar to ours. It's definitely deep to an extent. And they got some dudes. Some guys that I'm looking at include Steven Wilson, 50 games and a 3 ERA. A guy that San Diego fans absolutely loved this year was a guy that I covered in one of my videos early in the year for breakout candidates, and that was Nick Martinez. He was kind of like their David Peterson a little bit, kind of in the rotational. I would say he's more their Trevor Williams. Got to start whenever they needed to start through 37 games out of the pen, 3.4 ERA, 106 innings, 8 saves as well. Nick Martinez is definitely a threat to go multiple innings. Big guy, sneaky in the pen is Robert Suarez, who I just covered in a video coming out tomorrow because he is a 31-year-old rookie, and he just made it to the show, and he has a 2.27 ERA in 45 games. Those 3 names are definitely guys I think you will see before the eventual appearance of Josh Hader. And we do have to talk about Josh Hader because his numbers as a Padre are not good. They don't jump off the page. It's a 7.31 ERA in 16 innings. Not good at all. But recently, he has settled into the role. He gave up a run in his first appearance of September, and since then, from September 7th to the end of the season, 9 in the third innings, 1 unearned run, 1 walk, 13 strikeouts, no home runs. Definitely a cause for concern that we're getting probably the right version of Josh Hader. That is one of the last guys in the league that you want to go into the ninth facing if he is right. However, and I want to pull this up. Let's see if I can find it. First batter, good. So we're going to go to StatHead. There is one guy that I think has really good numbers against him. One guy in the Mets is 1 for 2 with a home run against Josh Hader to dead center in Petco Park. And his name is Darren Ruff. So who knows? I don't think you're going to start Ruff in any of these games. I think Alvarez would get a start before he does. But man, if Darren Ruff has a moment against Josh Hader, no one's going to care about that regular season. No one's going to give a shit what he did in the regular season for the Mets if he can get to Josh Hader. Peter Moylan is in the chat saying, good luck, Jolly. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate that. Peter was golfing today because he has nothing to worry about this weekend, which, you know what, I can respect. I know a lot of Mets fans don't like Peter Moylan. He is one of the best people that work at this company. So definitely give him a follow. And don't take the trolling he does too close to your heart because it's all for funsies. And we're going to see him in the NLCS, so it doesn't matter, guys. Let's see what else we got in our chat. Wow, 112 people in the chat. How about that? That's pretty freaking cool, man. That's pretty cool. What do you make of the fact that Marte is in the middle of the lineup and not towards the top? Is that a reflection of the final series against the Nats or in deference to him coming back possibly cold? That's from Seth O'Pitz. I think it is for if things go awry and Marte is hurt or he can't play the field for whatever reason. I don't think you want to use a sub at the top of the lineup because that just changed the architecture of your lineup. And if you're trying to table set for guys like McNeil and Alonso, having a guy in there that you didn't originally plan to have in there could definitely be a deterrent to that. So I think that is why he's lower in the lineup. Awesome Nader says, remember the Jose Peraza game-tying home run last year? I do. I was really upset when Hader gave up, I think, 3 home runs to the Phillies, and that was sort of like his first runs given up of the year. Because before that, the last guy to homer in the regular season off Josh Hader was Jose Peraza. It was Jose Peraza, then Freddie Freeman in the NLDS, and then the Phillies guys, and eventually things just fell apart. Not a question, but I just noticed Shea Station hit 5K subs. Congrats. Thank you. It's pretty freaking cool. We finally hit 5K, 10K on Instagram as well. Shea Station's been having a great month, and you guys are to thank. So I appreciate you guys. Jolly, I know you think Canna will be the guy this series. Is there any reason for that, or is it just vibes? Yeah, Jerry asked me at the tail end of last episode who is going to be the MVP of the series for the Mets. Jerry said Lindor, and I said Mark Canna, and here is why. Let me explain. So it's a little bit of vibes. Don't get me wrong, because, you know, Mark Canna, full of vibes. Paper Plane's going to play tonight. Stadium's going to get loud. Really excited for it. Mark Canna had that big Philly game, right? And he's kind of been quiet ever since the big Philly game where he hit those 2 home runs to kind of sneak a win for the Mets. Here's what I find really interesting. Before that Philly game happened, he was 10 for his last 50 with 9 strikeouts and 7 walks. A little bit more normal than his slump in September, but he was cold going into that game. And ending the season here, besides those last couple multi-hit games with the Nationals, which I'll admit, he had a stretch where he was 10 for his last 51. 16 strikeouts this time, 3 walks. I think Mark Canna gets a little bit of a wake-up call when he enters a little bit of a funk. And I think the 16 strikeouts is a big thing that stands out to me there because that means we're not getting traditional Mark Canna at-bats. And in a lot of his post-game quotes after he hit those 2 home runs against Philly, it was kind of just him amping himself up and saying, like, this is my moment. Like, the Phillies are trying to take the moment back, but it's mine. And I just think we're going to get that kind of fierce, ferocious version of Mark Canna in the playoffs, especially because, if I'm not mistaken, besides 2020, I don't know that Mark Canna has a ton of playoff experience. Yeah, in 2020, he got a decent amount of run, but not counting that since there's no crowd, he went 0 for 1 in the wildcard game in 18 and then 0 for 3 in the wildcard game in 19. The A's lost both those games. So for Mark Canna, this is kind of like a big postseason entrance for him, similar to Chris Bassett, because 2020 was the A's deepest run and there was no one there to see it. So it kind of feels like, you know, a rebirth for them. So I just think Mark Canna is hungry, as Tracksuit says, hungry for food and big hits. Tracksuit's been having a great night in chat. Benjamin Dashna says, is there any situation you would want Cookie to pinch in? I wouldn't trust him in a blowout. Cookie's not on the roster, So I assume this means for the NLDS. And I do think it would probably be in mop-up duty, maybe for a couple innings here and there. But it's tough to use Cookie in relief because Cookie's, the bane of his existence is his first inning. And for a reliever, that's just not ideal. So I don't know how Cookie's going to get in here. It's probably going to be for an injury or something like that, or like a spot start, which is a pretty bad situation. Makati Mass says, hello, Jolly, watching from the Philippines. That's awesome. Thank you for tuning in from all the way from over the Philippines. And yeah, guys, we talked a lot today, and I'm really glad that the chat showed out and I had a good time with me. Hopefully you guys aren't feeling too nervous. I know I am. I will be live tonight on the JM Baseball YouTube channel with Jake and Joe's if you want to come join me and partake in my ensuing celebration or misery. But we will see, guys. It's a big night. It's the biggest night the Mets have had in 6 years. Remember to enjoy it. Remember to bask in this because hopefully this is going to become a regular thing. Mets baseball in October. And hopefully this weekend is just the start of a month of stress for Mets fans. I will probably be going live after tonight's game. If you want to talk some more, whether it's a win or a loss, we can chat, and hopefully I can be some sort of a consoling figure to you if it's the loss, and hopefully we can celebrate together if it's a win. New episode of Shea Station tomorrow with Jerry, full episode recapping tonight's game and previewing tomorrow's game. No pregame show for the rest of the weekend. We'll be back on Tuesday if the Mets are still in it, which they will be. Have some confidence, guys. Let's go. Let's go out there and win our first playoff series in 7 years. Hell yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you guys tonight